The scanner beeped 3 times before Rivik bothered to look at it. Salvage work in the Talvar Nebula usually meant digging through asteroid debris and hopping for scraps of valuable metals. Nothing exciting ever happened out here. That was why independent operators like him could make a living without competition from the big corporations. His ship, Prophet's Edge, drifted slowly through the purple clouds of ionized gas. The sensors painted everything in shades of green and yellow on his display screen. Most of it was worthless rock and ice, but that triple beep meant something different, something metallic, something big. Rivik adjusted his position in the pilot's seat. His 4 arms moved across the controls with practiced ease. The Molnari species had evolved on a world where climbing and manipulation were survival skills. Now those extra limbs made him excellent at managing a ship alone. "Computer, analyze that signal," he said. The artificial voice responded immediately. "Object detected at coordinates 749 Mark 32. Composition shows titanium-carbon alloy. Size approximately 400 meters length. No power signature detected." Rivik felt his breathing passages tighten. 400 meters was enormous for a derelict. That much processed metal could pay for a new ship, maybe 2 new ships. He leaned forward, mandibles clicking together in excitement. "Take us closer, slow approach." The Prophet's Edge turned gently and began moving toward the coordinates. As they got closer, the nebula's purple mist started to clear. Rivik could see it through the forward viewport now, not just a chunk of debris, an actual ship. It hung in space like a predator frozen mid-strike. The hull was dark gray, almost black, angular and brutal in design. No smooth curves or decorative elements. Every surface looked functional, built for a purpose. Armor plating covered it in overlapping sections. Burns and scars marked the exterior, telling stories of violence. Rivik had seen thousands of ships in his 40 years of salvage work. This matched nothing in his memory. The design was alien in a way that made his skin prickle. Whoever built this thing thought differently than any species he knew. "Computer, run identification scan. Check all known ship registries." Several minutes passed while the computer searched its databases. Rivik used the time to circle the derelict slowly. Up close, the damage was more obvious. Long gouges ran across the hull like something with claws had tried to tear it open. Plasma scoring marked several sections. Whatever happened here, this ship had been in a serious fight. Near what looked like the stern, he spotted markings, letters in an unfamiliar alphabet. Rivik increased the magnification on his visual sensors. The symbols were weathered and partially burned away, but still readable if you knew what you were looking for. "UNSC Defiant Hope," he read aloud, sounding out the strange words. "Identification complete," the computer announced. "No match found in standard registry, cross-referencing construction materials and design elements. Partial match detected. Origin world classification, Class 15. Rivik's 4 hearts all skipped beats simultaneously. Class 15. That was impossible. Class 15 worlds were death traps. Planets so hostile that complex life barely survived, let alone developed intelligence. The galactic community had cataloged exactly 3 Class 15 worlds in known space. None of them had ever produced spacefaring civilizations. "Verify that classification," Rivik demanded. "Verification complete. Hull composition matches resource profiles of planet designated Earth. Class 15 Deathworld. Quarantined by Galactic Council 200 standard years ago. Native species declared extinct." Rivik sat back in his seat. His breathing tubes expanded and contracted rapidly. This was bigger than he thought, much bigger. If a Class 15 species had actually built a ship this advanced, the galactic community needed to know. It changed everything scientists thought they understood about evolution and intelligence. But there was a problem, a big one. The computer had said no power signature. But now, looking at his sensors again, Rivik noticed something odd. Deep inside the ship, in what might be an engineering section, there was a faint energy reading, barely detectable but present. Something on that ship was still active. His communication panel chirped. Rivik nearly jumped out of his seat before realizing it was just his business partner calling. He accepted the connection. "Rivik, what's your status?" The voice belonged to Holm, a Talvin who handled the administrative side of their salvage operations from a station 3 systems away. "You need to see this," Rivik said. He transferred the visual feed and sensor data. There was a long pause. When Holmes spoke again, his usually calm voice carried an edge of concern. "Is that what I think it is?" Class-15 origin, confirmed by the computer. "We should report this to the authorities. Let them handle it." Rivik looked at the massive derelict floating before him. The salvage rights on this would be worth more than he could make in 10 years of normal work. But Holm was right to be cautious. Everything from Class 15 worlds was dangerous by definition. The species that lived there had to be tough just to survive their own planet. "There's an active power source inside," Rivik said. "Might be survivors." All the more reason to let authorities handle it. But even as Holmes said it, Rivik knew they wouldn't. Galactic law was clear. Salvage rights went to whoever made first contact with a derelict. If he called authorities now, they would take over. He would get a finder's fee at best. All that potential profit would vanish. "I'm going to board it," Rivik announced. "That's insane. You don't know what's over there." "Exactly. Which is why I need to find out before anyone else does." Rivik ended the communication before Holm could argue further. He moved to the equipment locker and began pulling out his boarding gear. Pressure suit, scanning tools, a plasma cutter for sealed doors, and reluctantly a weapon, just in case. As he suited up, Rivik kept looking at the derelict through his viewport. The ship seemed to stare back at him with dark, empty viewport ports like sightless eyes. Something about it felt wrong. Not just alien, but deliberately designed to be intimidating. What kind of species built ships like this? What had they been preparing to fight? And more importantly, what had fought them here in the depths of the Talvar Nebula? Rivik checked his suit seals one final time. The airlock cycled open. Beyond it, the darkness of space waited. And beyond that, answers that might change the galaxy forever. He just had to survive long enough to find them. Rivik's magnetic boots clanked against the hull of the derelict as he made his way toward the nearest airlock. The silence of space pressed around him, broken only by his own breathing inside the suit. Every step felt heavy, deliberate. His forearms carried tools and weapons, ready for anything. The airlock was sealed tight. No surprise there. Ships didn't just open themselves after months drifting in space. Rivik placed his scanner against the metal surface. The device hummed and displayed information about the door's mechanism. Standard pressure seal, manual override available. He found the emergency release panel and pried it open with a crowbar. Inside were mechanical levers, beautifully simple in design. Whoever built this ship understood that fancy electronics could fail. Rivik pulled the levers in sequence. The airlock groaned and began to open. That was when something unexpected happened. Lights flickered on inside the airlock chamber. Dim emergency lighting, but functional. The ship recognized someone was trying to enter and powered up basic systems. Rivik paused. Should he continue? Every instinct screamed danger, but curiosity and greed pushed him forward. He stepped into the airlock and found the inner door controls. These worked too, responding to his touch. The inner door slid open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Rivik checked his suit readings. The atmosphere inside was thin but present. Temperature readings showed it was cold, far below what most species considered comfortable. But there was air. After all this time, somehow the ship maintained life support at minimal levels. He stepped into a corridor that seemed designed for giants. The ceiling was high, maybe 3 meters. Everything was built on a scale larger than necessary for most species. The doors were wide. The handrails on the walls were positioned for someone much taller than Rivik. Emergency lights cast red shadows everywhere. The corridor stretched in both directions, lined with doors and marked with symbols in that same strange alphabet. Rivik pulled out his portable translator and pointed it at the nearest sign. The device struggled with the language before offering a partial translation. Crew Quarters Section B. Rivik chose a direction and started walking. His magnetic boots clicked steadily against the floor. He passed door after door, all sealed. Through small windows in some, he could see personal quarters, bunks built for large bipedal beings. Personal effects still scattered around. Pictures on walls showing a blue and green planet. The beings in the pictures stood on two legs, had two arms, and faces that showed remarkable expressiveness. These were the humans, the extinct species from Class 15, except they hadn't been extinct when they built this ship. They had been exploring, fighting, dying far from their dangerous home. A sound made Rivik freeze. It came from deeper in the ship, metallic, rhythmic, like machinery trying to function. He followed the noise, moving carefully through the corridors. The sound grew louder as he approached what his scanner identified as the engineering section. The door to engineering was partially open, jammed halfway. Rivik squeezed through the gap and found himself in a large chamber filled with machinery. Enormous engines sat dormant. Power conduits ran along every surface. And in the center of it all, surrounded by emergency barriers, was a single cryopod. The pod was active. That explained the power reading he had detected. The machinery around it was desperately trying to keep it functional, drawing on emergency reserves that should have run dry months ago. But somehow, the pod remained operational. Rivik approached slowly. Through the frosted viewing window, he could see a figure inside, a human preserved in suspended animation. The medical display on the pod's side showed vital signs, weak but present. Whoever this was, they were still alive. He leaned closer to read the identification plate. Lieutenant Commander Amy Reed, Chief Engineer. A name, a rank, a role. This human had been important to the ship, important enough to be placed in the only working cryopod when everything went wrong. Rivik's communicator crackled. It was home again, probably worried since Rivik had gone silent for so long. "I found something," Rivik transmitted. "A survivor, human female in cryosleep." The response took a moment to come through. "You found a living Class 15 specimen." "Yes, should I wake it?" "Absolutely not. You have no idea how dangerous that could be. Secure the pod and bring it back to your ship. We need to contact the Galactic Research Institute immediately." But Rivik wasn't listening anymore. He was looking at the medical readouts. The cryopod was failing. Power reserves were down to critical levels. If he didn't do something soon, Amy Reed would die. After surviving whatever catastrophe hit this ship, after months floating in space, she would die because her life support finally gave out. "The pod is failing," Rivik said. "If I wait, she'll be dead before I can move it." "Then let nature take its course. We don't wake up Class 15 predators." Rivik looked at Amy Reed's face through the frost. She looked peaceful, unaware that her entire crew was gone, unaware that her species was considered extinct by the wider galaxy. Someone had put her in this pod hoping she would survive. Someone had made sure the emergency systems would keep trying to save her even when everything else failed. "I'm waking her up," Rivik decided. "Don't you dare." Rivik ended the communication. His hands moved across the pod's control panel. The interface was intuitive despite being designed by aliens. Medical equipment followed universal principles. He found the revival sequence and initiated it. The pod hummed louder. Chemicals began flowing through tubes. The frost on the viewing window started to clear. Internal heaters activated, slowly raising the temperature inside. The whole process would take 30 minutes according to the display. Rivik stepped back and waited. He kept his weapon ready just in case. The minutes crawled by. He watched the vital signs on the display gradually strengthen, heart rate increasing, brain activity returning, body temperature rising. Finally, the pod seal released with a hiss. The lid opened slowly. Steam poured out as the warm interior air met the cold ship atmosphere, and inside, Amy Reed's eyes opened. They were blue, bright blue, like the planet in all those pictures. They focused on Rivik with shocking speed. No confusion, no disorientation, just immediate assessment of the situation. Her hand moved to her side, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Then she tried to sit up and immediately collapsed back. Her muscles wouldn't respond properly after so long in cryo. She gasped, struggling to breathe the thin air. Rivik quickly attached a medical breather mask from his kit to her face. She grabbed it with both hands and breathed deeply. Their eyes met, human and Molnari, Class-15 Deathworlder and civilized spacer, two beings who should never have encountered each other, now sharing a moment that would change everything. Amy Reed opened her mouth and spoke her first words in a language Rivik's translator barely understood. "Where is my crew?" Rivik helped Amy Reed back to his ship. She could barely walk. Her muscles had atrophied from months in cryosleep, and the ship's thin atmosphere made breathing difficult even with the medical mask. But she refused to be carried. She insisted on moving under her own power, one hand gripping Rivik's shoulder for support, the other clutching the mask to her face. Once aboard the Prophet's Edge, Rivik guided her to the small medical bay. The facility was basic, designed for emergency treatment of common injuries. Nothing prepared for treating a Class-15 species, but Amy seemed to know what she needed. She pointed at equipment, made gestures, and through broken translation attempts, communicated her requirements. Rivik's computer worked to build a functional translation matrix. Amy's language was related to the ancient Earth languages in the database, but had evolved significantly. After an hour of back-and-forth communication using pictures, gestures, and slowly improving translation, they could finally talk. "How long?" Amy asked. Her voice was rough from disuse. She sat on the medical bed, wrapped in a thermal blanket, still shivering. 6 months, Rivik answered. "Your ship has been drifting for 6 months." Amy's face showed pain, not physical pain, something worse. "Everyone. We didn't find anyone else. I'm sorry." She was quiet for a long time. Her hands gripped the blanket tightly. When she finally spoke again, her voice was steady despite the grief. "Tell me what happened. Tell me everything you know." Rivik explained how he found the Defiant Hope, the damage, the signs of battle, the sealed sections filled with alien corpses that looked like insects. Amy listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "The swarm," she said. "We encountered them 3 systems from here. They seemed curious at first, sent communication attempts. We responded peacefully." She paused, jaw clenching. "Then they attacked, no warning, no reason we could understand." "What are they?" "Hive mind species. They think in ways we don't understand. They boarded our ship with hundreds of soldiers, maybe thousands. They kept coming and coming. We fought them deck by deck." Amy's eyes were distant, seeing memories. "My crew held them at engineering, gave me time to seal the section. The captain ordered me into cryo, said someone needed to survive, someone needed to warn others." "Warn them of what?" "The swarm doesn't stop. They consume knowledge, technology, biology. They take everything useful and move on. If they find the wider galaxy, they'll spread like a plague." Rivik felt cold despite the comfortable temperature in his ship. "Your crew defeated them, though. I saw the swarm bodies." "We killed everything that boarded us, but our ship was too damaged. We were dying slowly. The captain knew we couldn't make it home." Amy looked directly at Rivik. "How did you know my language? How do you know about Earth?" This was the difficult part. Rivik accessed his computer and brought up the galactic records on Earth. He showed Amy the entries, Planet Earth. Class-15 Deathworld. Automated probes destroyed. All contact attempts failed. Native species presumed extinct. Extinct? Amy's expression shifted from confusion to something harder. We're not extinct. Earth has 47 billion people. We have colonies on 7 systems. We have, she stopped. Understanding crossed her face. You can't detect us. What do you mean? Earth went silent intentionally. After the first contact attempts were destroyed, our government decided the galaxy was too dangerous. We implemented complete communication blackout. No signals out, no signals in. We've been growing in the dark for 90 years. Rivik stared at her. 90 years? You've been spacefaring for 90 years. 94 technically. We learned quickly. Had to. Every species we encountered was hostile or indifferent. We built ships designed for combat, built colonies that could defend themselves, built a civilization that could survive even if Earth itself fell. How many ships do you have? Amy smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Enough. We've been fighting the swarm for 30 years. They found Mars colony first, nearly destroyed it. We fought them off. Since then, we've been hunting them systematically. The Defiant Hope was part of the deep-range scout fleet. We push forward, find threats, eliminate them before they find our colonies. You're at war with the swarm. We're winning against the swarm, slowly, but they keep coming from somewhere. We need to find their origin. That's what my mission was about. Amy touched the ID badge still clipped to her uniform. We found something. That's why they attacked so aggressively. We discovered one of their hive worlds. Rivik's translator was working perfectly now, but he almost wished it wasn't. Every revelation from Amy made the situation more complicated. Humanity wasn't extinct. They were thriving. They were military. They were fighting a war the rest of the galaxy didn't know existed. What happens now? Rivik asked. I need to contact my fleet. We have emergency protocols. When a ship goes silent, search parties are deployed. They're probably looking for the Defiant Hope right now. How do I contact them? Amy pointed at his communication system. Give me access. I'll send an encrypted burst transmission. They'll respond within hours if they're in range, days if they're not. Rivik hesitated. This was it. Once he allowed Amy to contact her people, everything changed. The galaxy would learn that humanity existed, that they were powerful, that they had been preparing for contact on their terms, not as discovered primitives but as equals. Will they hurt me? Rivik asked quietly. Amy looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out with one hand. Rivik instinctively recoiled. She stopped, keeping her hand extended, palm up, a gesture of peace. You saved my life, Amy said. You could have left me to die. You could have spaced me when you realized what I was, but you brought me here, helped me, treated me like a person, not a specimen or a threat. She kept her hand extended. Humans understand gratitude. We honor debts. You'll be safe, I promise. Rivik looked at her hand, so different from his four-fingered manipulators, but the gesture was clear. He reached out and touched her palm with one of his hands. Her grip was gentle, careful not to hurt him. Send your message, Rivik said. Amy moved to the communication console. Her fingers flew across the controls despite her weakened condition. She entered complex codes from memory and transmitted a tight beam signal into deep space. The entire process took less than 2 minutes. Now we wait, Amy said. They didn't have to wait long. 3 hours later, the sensors detected ships entering the system. 3 vessels moving fast. Their design matched the Defiant Hope. Angular, armored, built for violence. They broadcast identification codes that Amy confirmed as authentic. The human fleet had arrived, and Rivik's simple salvage operation had just become a moment of first contact that would echo through galactic history. The human ships surrounded the Prophet's Edge with practiced efficiency. Not threatening, but definitely not casual. They held positions that would allow them to respond to any hostile action in seconds. Rivik watched them on his displays and felt very small. The lead ship established communication. "This is UNSC Steadfast, Commander William Hayes speaking. We're here to recover Lieutenant Commander Reed. Prepare for boarding." Amy spoke up from beside Rivik. "Commander Hayes, this is Reed. I'm aboard a civilian salvage vessel. The operator, Rivik, rescued me from the Defiant Hope and provided medical assistance. Request you treat him as a friendly." There was a pause. "Acknowledged. Medical team is preparing to board. How are you holding up, Amy?" "Weak but functional. The Defiant Hope is recoverable. It's here, 3 kilometers from my current position, sir, the crew." "We know. We found the distress beacon signatures. I'm sorry." Amy's face tightened, but she kept her voice professional. "Understood. Permission to brief you on mission findings before medical evac." "Granted, we're coming aboard." 15 minutes later, Rivik found his ship occupied by 6 humans. They moved with careful precision, checking corners and assessing potential threats. Their armor made them look massive, adding bulk to already large frames. They carried weapons that seemed designed to destroy rather than disable. Commander Hayes removed his helmet first. He was tall, even for a human, with gray streaked through his dark hair. Scars marked his face and neck. His eyes swept the ship's interior with the assessment of someone who had seen combat and survived. "Thank you for helping Amy," Hayes said to Rivik. His accent was thick, but the translator handled it well. "That took courage." "I didn't know what she was at first," Rivik admitted. "And when you did know, you still helped." "She needed help. That seemed more important than being afraid." Hayes smiled slightly. "You'd fit in well with humans. We respect practical thinking." He turned to Amy. "Report." Amy explained the mission, the deep-range scout, the discovery of the swarm hive world, the coordinates, the attack, the last stand. Hayes listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. "You're certain about the hive world location?" Hayes asked. "Confirmed. 3 separate scans. It's real and it's massive, bigger than anything we've encountered before." "That changes things." Hayes activated a holographic display on his wrist device. It showed a star map with numerous markers. "We've been tracking swarm movements for months, multiple sighting clusters. We thought they were separate groups. If there's a central hive world, it explains the coordination." Rivik spoke up hesitantly. "May I ask something?" Hayes looked at him. "Go ahead." "Why is humanity fighting alone? Why not contact the Galactic Council? There are thousands of species, millions of ships, together." "Together we'd what? Unite against a common threat?" Hayes shook his head. "Maybe. Or maybe we'd spend years debating while the swarm spreads. Maybe some species would try to negotiate. Maybe others would panic and fragment. We've studied your galactic history, Rivik. The Council isn't built for fast military response." "You've studied us." "We monitor all communications we can intercept. Radio, data streams, public broadcasts. We've been listening to the galaxy for decades, learning your languages, understanding your cultures, preparing for the day we'd have to reveal ourselves." Amy added, "Earth learned early that you can't trust first impressions. We planned for every scenario. Best case, we'd find peaceful neighbors. Worst case, we'd find hostile empires. We prepared for worst case and hoped for best case." One of the other humans, a medic, was scanning Amy with devices Rivik didn't recognize. She spoke up. "Commander, Reed needs proper treatment. The salvager did well, but she needs our medical facilities." "Agreed." Hayes looked at Rivik. "We'll need to ask you some questions about how you found the Defiant Hope, what you've seen, what you plan to do with this information." Rivik felt his breathing tubes tighten. "Am I a prisoner?" "No, but you're the first non-human to encounter humanity in person and survive to talk about it. That makes you historically significant. It also makes you a potential security risk." Amy interrupted. "Sir, I gave him my word he'd be safe. And I'll honor that, but safe doesn't mean free to immediately broadcast everything he's learned." Hayes focused on Rivik again. "We need to know what you intend to do. Are you going to contact your government, the council, news networks?" Rivik thought carefully. "I don't know, this is bigger than me. The galaxy should know humanity exists, that you're fighting the swarm, that we've been secretly building military ships and colonies for 90 years while pretending to be extinct." Hayes' tone was dry. "That'll go over well. Some species will see us as potential allies. Others will see us as a threat that's been hiding and growing stronger. Some might even try preemptive strikes." "Would you fight the entire galaxy?" "If we had to, yes, and we'd make it costly." Hayes sat down across from Rivik. "But we don't want that. We're tired of fighting. We've been at war with the swarm for 3 decades. We've lost colonies, ships, millions of people. We want allies. We want trade. We want to be part of something bigger than endless survival." "Then why the secrecy?" "Because we needed to be strong enough that other species would treat us as equals, not as primitives to be managed or resources to be exploited. We needed to make sure no one could conquer us before we were ready to defend ourselves." Rivik understood. He had read the histories. Many species had achieved spaceflight only to be dominated by older, more established civilizations. Humanity had chosen a different path. They had chosen to grow in secret until they were too strong to be pushed around. "What happens now?" Rivik asked. Hayes stood. "Now we tow the Defiant Hope home, we take Amy for medical treatment, and we have a decision to make." He looked at Rivik seriously. "Humanity was going to reveal itself eventually, maybe in 5 years, maybe 10, but you've forced the timeline, you know we exist. You've seen our ships, you've talked to us. That information will spread whether you want it to or not. So what are you asking?" "We're asking if you'll help us. Be our first contact with the Galactic Council. Carry a message from humanity. Tell them we exist. Tell them we want to talk. But also tell them we're not asking for permission to exist. We're offering partnership." Amy added quietly, "Tell them we've been protecting them from the swarm for 30 years. They just didn't know it." Rivik looked at the humans surrounding him. Warriors, every one of them, but also people who had shown him courtesy and respect, who had kept their word, who had saved their own despite terrible losses. "I'll do it," Rivik said. "I'll carry your message." Hayes extended his hand in that human gesture Amy had taught Rivik. They shook, sealing an agreement that would change the galaxy forever. The journey to Hub Station Tertius took 3 weeks. Rivik spent the time reviewing everything Hayes had given him: data files on humanity, historical records, combat footage of the swarm wars, technology specifications, cultural information, everything he would need to present humanity's case to the Galactic Council. Holm called him every day, demanding explanations. Rivik provided only basic details until he arrived. This news needed to be delivered properly to the right people at the right time. Premature leaks could cause panic. Hub Station Tertius appeared ahead, a massive structure orbiting a neutral star. Home to millions of beings from hundreds of species. The political center of galactic civilization, where decisions affecting thousands of worlds were made. Rivik docked his ship and immediately requested an emergency session with the council. The administrative staff dismissed him at first. Salvagers didn't get emergency sessions. But when he transmitted his credentials and a sample of the evidence Hayes had provided, everything changed. Within hours, he stood before the full Galactic Council. The chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate representatives from wildly different species. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some saw invisible light, others in infrared. But all of them looked at Rivik with the same question in whatever they used for eyes: why are we here? Chancellor Vorn, a precept whose species had been spacefaring for 8,000 years, spoke first. Salvager Rivik, you have requested emergency session claiming discovery of extreme importance. The Council will hear your report. Rivik stepped forward. He had rehearsed this moment repeatedly during the journey. He activated the holographic display and showed them the Defiant Hope, showed them Amy Reed, showed them the human ships, showed them everything. 6 weeks ago, I discovered a derelict vessel in the Talvar Nebula. Investigation revealed it was constructed by a species from a Class-15 Deathworld, planet Earth, a species the Council declared extinct 200 years ago. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouting questions, demanding verification, expressing disbelief. Vorn called for order. "That's impossible," declared Representative Fress, a Cavian military coordinator. Class-15 species don't achieve spaceflight, they destroy themselves first. "This one didn't," Rivik replied. He showed them footage of Amy Reed, showed them her explanations, showed them the human ships arriving. Humanity has been spacefaring for 94 years. They have colonies on multiple systems. They have a military fleet. And they've been fighting a war to protect galactic space from a threat we didn't know existed. He explained about the swarm, about the decades of secret conflict, about the hive worlds and the ongoing containment efforts. The Council listened with growing alarm. "Why didn't they contact us?" demanded Representative Ness, a Portian diplomat. "Why hide?" "Because the first time they tried to make contact, their probes were destroyed. The first manned expedition they sent was attacked. Only 3 survivors returned. Humanity decided the galaxy was hostile and chose to grow strong before revealing themselves." "That's reasonable paranoia for a Deathworld species," observed Yenna, present as a witness. "They evolved expecting threats. They prepared for threats. They found threats." Fress accessed his data systems. "These swarm creatures. You said humanity has combat records." Rivik transmitted the files Hayes had provided. Fress studied them for several minutes, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "Council members, I've cross-referenced these swarm signatures with historical records. 600 years ago, a species matching this description attacked 7 civilizations in the outer reaches. They were eventually destroyed by combined fleet action. Casualties numbered in the billions. We thought they were extinct." "But they're not," Rivik said. "Humanity has been fighting them for 30 years, without our help, without our knowledge. They've been protecting the galactic border while we didn't even know there was a threat." The implications settled over the Council like a heavy blanket. A Class-15 species was not only real, but was actively defending galactic civilization from a threat the Council had forgotten about. "What does humanity want?" Vorn asked. Rivik played the message Hayes had recorded. The human commander appeared in holographic form before the Council. He spoke clearly, his words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "Members of the Galactic Council, my name is Commander William Hayes of the United Nations Space Command. I speak on behalf of humanity. We know our existence comes as a surprise. We know our military capabilities may cause concern. But we come to you not as conquerors or supplicants. We come as potential partners." Hayes continued, outlining humanity's position. They wanted diplomatic recognition, exchange of ambassadors, technology sharing, territorial agreements, and most importantly, coordinated defense against the swarm. "We've been alone for too long," Hayes concluded. "Fighting threats too big for any single species. We're offering alliance, partnership, the chance to face the darkness together instead of separately. We hope you'll accept." The Council chamber was silent when the message ended. Finally, Vorn spoke. "This is unprecedented. We need time to deliberate, to verify, to assess." "There's a time limit," Rivik said quietly. "Humanity sent this message as a courtesy, but they're not asking permission to exist. They already exist. The only question is whether we acknowledge them as allies or ignore them as unknowns." Representative Ness asked, "What if we choose to ignore them?" Then they continue as they have been, silent, growing, fighting alone. And when the swarm or some other threat eventually reaches our space, we'll face it without the allies who have been preparing for it for decades. Fress added, "Military analysis suggests humanity's combat capabilities exceed most Council species. Their Deathworld origin means they're naturally more resilient. Their technology is focused on durability and effectiveness. If they chose hostility, we would face significant challenges." "But they're not choosing hostility," Yenna pointed out. "They're choosing communication. That should count for something." The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted to reject humanity outright. Others wanted to embrace them immediately. Most fell somewhere in between, wanting careful, measured contact. Finally, a vote was called. The result was narrow but clear. The Council would accept humanity's offer of diplomatic contact, with conditions, with restrictions, but acceptance nonetheless. Vorn announced, "We will send a delegation to meet with human representatives in neutral space, 30 days from now. Coordinates to be provided. Salvager Ryvik, you will accompany the delegation as liaison." Ryvik felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. His simple salvage operation had become a bridge between humanity and the galaxy. He only hoped the bridge would hold. The meeting station materialized from slip space like a sculpture made of light and metal. Humanity had constructed it in 30 days. The speed alone impressed the Council delegation. The design impressed them more. Modular sections that could be reconfigured, docking ports for hundreds of different ship types, defense systems that were obvious but not threatening. It said everything about human engineering philosophy: adaptable, efficient, prepared. Ryvik stood with the Council representatives as their ships approached. 12 species had sent diplomats, not the full Council, but enough to represent galactic civilization. Some came eager to meet humanity. Others came reluctantly, convinced this was a mistake. 3 human ships waited at the station. They had arrived days earlier, claiming security concerns. Ryvik suspected they wanted time to study the station's surroundings and prepare contingencies. Deathworld thinking: always expect problems. The delegations met in a central conference chamber. Humans on one side, Council representatives on the other. Ryvik stood in the middle, literally and figuratively between 2 civilizations. Admiral Foster led the human delegation. She was older than Hayes, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. Beside her stood diplomatic specialists, military advisors, and scientists. And Amy Reed, recovered from her injuries, wearing a formal uniform. "Thank you for coming," Foster began. "We know this is unusual. First contact typically doesn't happen like this." Chancellor Vorn responded, "Typically, first contact happens when one civilization discovers another, not when one reveals itself after 90 years of deliberate hiding." "Fair criticism," Foster acknowledged. "We chose caution over openness. Our early experiences taught us the galaxy could be dangerous. We decided to grow strong before making our presence known." Representative Ness, the Portian diplomat, spoke up. "Your military capabilities concern many Council members. You've built a fleet designed for war. You have colonies fortified against attack. You present yourselves as defenders, but you look like conquerors." Amy Reed stepped forward. "May I respond to that?" Foster nodded permission. Amy addressed the Council directly. "I'm the only survivor from the UNSC Defiant Hope. 46 of my crewmates died fighting the swarm. They weren't conquerors. They were explorers who defended themselves when attacked. Every human ship is built tough because we've learned that space is hostile. Not because we plan to attack others, but because we refuse to be easy victims." She paused, letting her words sink in. "My crew died protecting information about a swarm hive world. They died making sure someone survived to warn others. That's what humans do. We protect, even when it costs us everything. Fress, the Cavian military coordinator, asked the practical question everyone was thinking. How do we know you'll stop at defense? How do we know you won't expand into council territory? Foster answered honestly. You don't know, you have to trust us. Just like we have to trust you won't try to destroy us now that you know we exist. Trust is built through actions over time. We're proposing a framework for that trust. She activated a holographic display showing a star map. These are the territories humanity claims. 15 systems, all uninhabited by other species. We're offering to respect Council borders if Council respects ours. We want buffer zones, trade agreements, cultural exchange, and most importantly, military cooperation against the swarm. Why should we believe the swarm is a significant threat? Asked a Genthi representative. Your evidence shows them attacking your ships. That could be isolated incidents. Show them, Foster said to one of her advisors. The holographic display changed. It showed astronomical data, migration patterns, attack vectors, hive world locations, 30 years of human intelligence gathering on the swarm. The scope was staggering. The swarm wasn't a minor threat. They were spreading through uncharted space, consuming resources and eliminating anything that got in their way. We've contained them so far, Foster explained. But they're adapting, learning, growing. In 5 years, maybe 10, they'll reach Council space. When that happens, you'll need allies who know how to fight them. Vorn studied the data carefully. This information is valuable. You could have kept it secret, used it as leverage. We could have, Foster agreed. But we're tired of fighting alone. We want partners, not leverage. The negotiations continued for hours. Humans and Council representatives debating details, territory boundaries, technology sharing protocols, embassy locations, military cooperation frameworks. Gradually, a structure emerged, an agreement that gave humanity diplomatic recognition while establishing safeguards that made Council species feel secure. During a break, Rivik found himself standing with Amy Reed on an observation deck. They looked out at the stars together. Do you think this will work? Rivik asked. I think we'll try, Amy said. That's all anyone can do, try and hope it's enough. Your people could have stayed hidden, built an empire in secret. Why reveal yourselves now? Because hiding is lonely, and because threats like the swarm are too big for anyone to face alone. She looked at Rivik. You saved my life. You could have left me to die, reported finding a derelict and lived comfortably on the salvage rights. Instead, you took a risk. You helped someone different from yourself. That's what gives me hope. Hope for what? That maybe the galaxy isn't as hostile as we feared. That maybe there's room for cooperation after all. The final agreement was signed by all parties. Humanity would be recognized as an independent civilization with full diplomatic rights. They would share defensive technology with the Council. Joint military exercises would begin to prepare for potential swarm incursions. Cultural exchange programs would start immediately. Ambassadors would be exchanged within 6 months. As the delegations prepared to depart, Foster approached Rivik privately. We're appointing Amy as our first ambassador to Council space. She suggested you might be willing to serve as her liaison, someone who understands both cultures. Rivik thought about it. His salvage days were over regardless. He had become part of something much larger. I'll do it. Good, the galaxy is changing, Rivik. What you did, finding that ship, saving Amy, bringing our message to the Council, it started something that can't be stopped now. Humanity and the galactic community are going to learn to coexist. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, Rivik replied. 5 years later, the first joint Human Council fleet conducted exercises in neutral space. 10 years later, human colonies traded openly with Council worlds. 15 years later, when the swarm made their expected push into Council territory, they met a united defense that drove them back decisively. Rivik stood with Amy on a space station above Earth, watching the blue-green planet that had produced such resilient people. Together, they had helped build a bridge between a Deathworld species and galactic civilization. The bridge had held, and because it held, both sides were stronger. They found a ship from a Class-15 Deathworld, then learned humanity already lived there, and the galaxy would never be the same.